Between the moment an impulse hits your brain and your hand turns into a physical action, there is a tiny fraction of time, roughly 1/60th of a second. This micro-moment is where human conscience actually operates. In the mid-1970s, a parole officer in Wisconsin realized that clinical psychology was failing to stop violence in the field. Terms like id impulse or passive-aggressive were too abstract. They required the people in his office to learn a clinician's vocabulary before they could even begin to help themselves. He replaced that vocabulary with a visual grammar, 3 simple geometric shapes. These allowed his counselees to watch their own mindset in the moments before a conflict escalated. The first shape is a circle, representing an open state where reflection is possible. As a mindset hardens into a rigid demand, it snaps into a square, a fixed imperative. Anger is this rigidity tilted into an attack, as the square tips into a forward-pointing triangle. This officer tapped people on parole to recognize these internal postures at their own kitchen tables. Recognizing a square mindset allowed them to physically restore the pause. They weren't fighting their impulses, they were simply watching the shapes change. If simple geometry can extend the pause to save a life, we have to consider the inverse. What happens when massive institutional power is deployed to engineer the total evaporation of that interval? In 1954, the CIA hired PR pioneer Edward Bernays to manufacture a narrative justifying the overthrow of Guatemala's government for the United Fruit Company. Bernays understood that human conscience is difficult to defeat in a direct argument. When given the time to weigh a choice, most people default to a baseline of empathy. To bypass this, Bernays used saturation. He shrunk the reflection interval by flooding the public mind with rapid-fire information. Chaining stimulus to stimulus, he used experts to endorse narratives. Under constant noise, the cognitive pause evaporates. Bernays targeted the American public, inducing the press and Congress to underwrite a private corporation's interests with public money and moral credit. This consent grew out of an inescapable, engineered atmosphere. If a manufactured narrative leads directly to a violent coup, the mastermind remains beyond the reach of international law. The legal precedent for this was set at the Nuremberg trials, where the court had to decide how to judge the men who shaped the public mind for the Third Reich. Hans Fritzsche was the senior radio propagandist who saturated German airwaves with lies to favor the war effort, yet the tribunal fully acquitted him. The tribunal ruled that while the law can punish a direct command to kill, simply shaping public opinion to support a war does not reach the threshold of a crime. The narrative engineer is legally invisible because their work disappears into the background. By the time the violence occurs, the engineered deception is categorized as public opinion, an abstract force that no court is equipped to prosecute. This strategy of saturation is now the architecture of the modern attention economy. The evaporation of the pause is being made automatic and continuous through personalized 24/7 digital feeds. When the atmosphere is controlled, history is often lost. In the 17th century, the Colombo of Palmares was a free society of thousands who escaped slavery in Brazil. Palmares thrived for decades, but they kept no archive of their own. Today, nearly everything we know of their struggle was written by the colonial soldiers who destroyed them. Their identity was remembered through the paperwork of their enemies. International law remains blind to atmospheric manipulation, which means the defense must happen before the saturation begins. This requires a self-authored, unalterable registry of provenance. Saturation relies on messages appearing from independent or hidden sources to bypass our judgment. A strict, dated record of exactly who was paid to say what breaks the spell. It forces the pre-digested message back into the pause, where it can be weighed against its own source. In the 1600s, the people of Palmares were free in practice, long before any law admitted it. Like the parole officer giving individuals the tools to watch their own mindset, maintaining an unalterable record of truth is how we reclaim the territory of the pause.